Hostile tank. Target eliminated. Identified. Hostile.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Armored Warfare with your host, Czar Peppers. Today we're going to take a look at the Soviet-designed T-72 main battle tank. This is one of the most widely produced tanks of all time, with only over 25,000 units being built from 1973 until the present day, and used in the Soviet and Russian military, along with export models that were sold or built under license in a whole bunch of different countries, from Algeria to Bulgaria, Cuba, Finland, which actually surprised me, Hungary, India, Iran, and the list goes on and on. Various variants are still in service to this day, with a number of modernized models still available. The Iraqi military currently operates them. They had 77 tanks recently donated to them by Hungary in 2005, and they're only one of a number of other countries that still use them. The tank is equipped with a 125mm smoothbore gun using fin-stabilized ammunition. It also includes a 7.62mm coaxial gun and some with a 12.7mm gun for air defense. The main gun fires armor-piercing discarding sabot, heat, and high-explosive fragmentation rounds. The armor of the T-72 is made up of composite materials to protect the crew from heat rounds. Some models are also fitted with reactive armor. For those who don't know what that is, they are basically shaped explosive charges that line the outside of the tank. When an incoming round gets within a certain distance of the charge, it detonates and disables the incoming round, or at least decreasing its effectiveness. Compared to other tanks of the tier in armored warfare, it has pretty thick front armor on the hull at a high angle to help deflect incoming fire. Whereas the T-64 was a fairly advanced and complex tank that cost a substantial amount of money to produce and was solely for the Soviet military, the goal of the T-72 was to make a cost-effective tank that could be produced in large numbers for the Soviet military and for the export market. In the end, the T-72 cost 40% less to produce than the T-64. It originated as the Object 172, and in 1971 it was evaluated and deemed functional and capable and began production soon after. They quickly began to replace the T-55s and T-62s that were in service at the time. Compared to Western tank designs, it was a much smaller tank. Due to its autoloader, it had one less crew member, contributing to its overall smaller size. One particular strength was its low profile, allowing the tank to be very effective in the hull-down position, and slightly harder to spot in general. It was a comparatively light tank, coming in at 41 tons overall. There were actually roads and bridges throughout the Warsaw Pact that were designed to take the weight of the T-72 in formation, but not strong enough to support the weight of NATO tanks. Rather interesting little idea, I think. Equipped with a snorkel, it could cross rivers up to 5 meters deep, or 16 feet for all you Yankees. In case of some kind of problem with the snorkel, the whole crew had their own rebreathers, so they didn't, drown. And in the event that the tank got stuck under the water, they also had a bottle of vodka and a copy of the Communist Manifesto. Except that's a lie. Or is it? I suppose that's what the rebreathers were for. Like many Soviet tanks and vehicles from the time, it had protection from nuclear radiation, biological and chemical weapons. Many were also fitted with the state-of-the-art Soviet-designed log, a must for any Russian tank. While talking about the T-72, I thought I would talk a little bit about the kind of tactics that the Soviet military would employ, and how exactly they would use these tanks in relation to other fighting forces in their military. In offensive maneuvers, one of the first to put ordnance on enemy positions would be the artillery. The Soviet military believed that the primary role of the artillery in an assault was to suppress enemy anti-tank weapons. It was believed that after a barrage, advancing Soviet tanks would have around 3 minutes before the enemy were back at their weapon stations and able to fire. The tanks would lead the assault ahead of the infantry still mounted in IFVs or APCs, like the BMP or BTR lines, for example. They would advance at around 12 to 15 kilometers per hour. For accurate fire, they would halt their progress briefly in order to fire, but usually their primary goal was to provide suppressing fire for the advancing infantry behind in IFVs and APCs. This meant firing on the move. The infantry would then dismount around 400 meters from enemy positions, or 500 to 1,000 meters if unsuppressed. There would be exceptions when moving through rough terrain, built-up areas, crossing water, or pushing forward at night, in which scenario the infantry would lead the assault with the tanks behind them. The goal of the first assault was not to secure the enemy lines, but rather to overrun the position and continue on, leaving the second wave to eliminate any remaining pockets of resistance and secure the positions. If you would like to read into these tactics more, I left a link in the description for a very interesting article on Soviet military doctrine at the time. I mean, if I remember to put it in the description. Please remind me if I forget. One of the first big tests for the T-72 was during the Iran-Iraq War. The Iranians operated a number of chieftains and patents. In one instance, an Iraqi battalion of T-72s came up against an Iranian battalion of chieftains. In the course of the battle, all of the Iranian tanks were destroyed, and the Iraqis suffered no losses. The 105mm guns and tow missiles proved ineffective against the front armor of the Soviet-designed T-72, although it is worth noting that the Western tanks used by Iran probably weren't in top working condition. At this point, spare parts would be a problem, as the Islamic Revolution overthrew the American-installed monarch, so it isn't like they would be providing Iran with spare parts. I mean, other than Iran-Contra and selling weapons to Saddam as well. But despite their early successes, when they started to come up against the next generation Western tanks during the Gulf War and the 2003 invasion of Iraq, it was a much different story. Although it's worth mentioning that these were export models and may not accurately represent the combat potential of the Russian variants, during the Gulf War there were many instances in which smaller numbers of American Abrams tanks dominated large numbers of Iraqi T-72s within minutes, as their turrets were vulnerable to fire from the new American tanks. This would often set off the carousel that fed rounds to the gun via the auto-reloading system, dramatically eliminating the tank. A number of Iraqi T-72s were built locally. These were known as the Lions of Babylon, or Assad Babil. There were many different variants of the tank. Some could launch anti-tank guided missiles via the main gun, some had more reactive armor, thicker turret armor, upgraded control and fire control systems, more powerful engines, and models meant for the Soviet and Russian military, along with models intended for the export market. As for the in-game T-72, or at least the Ural, I can't say that I'm very fond of the thing. Maybe I was just having a bad day, but it seemed like every game I played I was rather crap at. Maybe I'm just not used to the vehicle yet, need to give it some more time in order to figure out how it's best employed. I find the Glacius armor is pretty good, with a good angle to it, but the turret can be a bit of a weak spot. I find that it doesn't hold as much ammunition as some of the other tanks, and I think that was an issue with the tank in real life as well. The reloading speed and aim speed can be frustrating at times, but I could understand the reload speed considering it took a 125mm rounds. And I suppose the aim speed is just Russian tanks being, well, Russian. Oh, it's all in good fun. If there's one lesson the world should know, it's to never underestimate the Russian people. In the end, its place in history is set in stone. One of the most widely produced tanks ever, desired by countries all across the globe, even up to this day. Like any tank, it had its years of glory, its years of upgrades to stay current, and then the years that showcased its advancing age compared to more modern designs. But I don't think that anyone is ever going to forget about this exceptional tank anytime soon. So on that note, that's the T-72 main battle tank. Don't forget to like if you liked this video, or dislike if you didn't. And don't forget to subscribe. I'm getting pretty close to 100 subscribers, and I would love to be able to get there by the end of the month. I do a number of different games, but Armored Warfare is one of my main go-to games for videos. But I also like to do War Thunder videos, Star Citizen, Elite Dangerous, World of Warships, or whatever I feel like playing at any given time. Much of the time I like to bring history and the real-world topic of the game I'm playing into my videos. So if you like that kind of nerdy stuff, then you may very well like my channel. So, until next time.